Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Freeride. So this is a board game released in 2021 by designer Friedemann Friese. This one accommodates 1 to 5 players and takes a very precise 55 minutes to play if you were to go by the box. So as with most train games, this one does have an element of route building and contract fulfillment, and this one is a 2021 release, so this is his latest game as of the time of this video. Before I get into the review, I just want to give a quick mention and a shout out to kienda.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer in the UK. But let's get on to Freeride. So Freeride is going to look like this when it's on the table. I've advanced the game somewhat here to give you some examples of the gameplay, because I don't think the setup is going to add any value to this video. So you have the big map of Europe here, and of course all around this map you've got all these different cities, from Brussels to Amsterdam. You've got Minsk up here, you've got Moscow, and you've even got the UK over here. So you've got a big map here, and of course between all these major cities you have these train routes. And of course throughout the game each player is going to be building train line to connect these cities, with the idea of moving their trains from city to city to fulfill these contracts. So the contracts are going to look like this. We have this display of 6 columns of cards, and these are going to be the almost tickets you're trying to fulfill. But these work in quite a weird way, where despite having 3 locations in each column, you only pick 2 of those cards in order to take that contract. So for example, this column here would either mean that you can either start in Helsinki and deliver to Minsk, or you can start in Minsk and deliver to Warsaw. And whichever one of these you pick, the one that you neglect and forsake is taken out of the game. So you've got 3 decks of cards here, and each of these decks of cards only have 1 copy of each city in them. So as you can see, you've got to be quite efficient on how you're going to map these out, because some routes are a lot quicker than others. So you can see like Helsinki to Minsk, so Helsinki up here to Minsk here is a pretty short route. But sometimes you might be going all the way from Moscow to Lisboa, which might not be as efficient or as effective. So yeah, you've got the display there. You've got a bunch of railway track tokens here, which are just going to be used to connect the city to city. Each player setup is going to look a bit like this, where you've got some money, and money is a very tight resource in this game. You've got a personal supply of train line. You've got a train here, which shows that at the moment I can move at 2 speed, which means I can move from city to city twice as a single action. And I've got 1 carriage here, which shows that I can currently hold 1 contract. So my current contract at the moment is to travel from Seville all the way to Cologne in Germany. Each player is also going to have their own kind of marks here to show which train lines are owned by you, and you've got this kind of in progress token, which is just a bit of a player aid. So I suppose I should talk about the winning condition of this game. So the idea is we're trying to get victory points, and the way we get victory points is either by fulfilling contracts, and the first city of a unique city that you visit or deliver a contract to is going to be worth 5 points, but every duplicate of that city is going to be worth 2 points at the end of the game. Every coin you have in your personal supply is going to be worth 3 points at the end of the game. And you're going to keep playing until all these decks have been depleted, and then you can potentially or voluntarily remove your train from the board once that's done, in order to potentially get more points, which we'll touch on a little bit later. So let's talk about the gameplay of Freeride. So on a player's turn, you're going to have a choice of 1 of 3 actions, the first of which is to build new railway line, and that's a very simple action where you're going to have up to 2 construction points, and that normally means that you can build 2 pieces of track. However, there is exceptions to that. So for example, I could extend this track here by going through Munich and building these 2 pieces of track as a single action. And when I do that, I'm going to place one of my markers to show that I built that railway line, and shows that that line is currently belonging to me. However, there are some exceptions, as I mentioned here, where you got these kind of highlighted spots, which actually requires a whole action in order to build a single piece of railway line, which of course acts as a bit of a speed bump. Now, once you build railway line, you have to either kind of connect with your route, or through a route that connects through other players. So you can't just spawn the middle of nowhere and just start building route here, which is, I suppose, pretty intuitive. But as a follow-up action, when you build a railway line, you can optionally spend a coin, which, bear in mind, they are worth 3 victory points at the end of the game, in order to take 5 more railway track from the supply into your personal supply to keep that flow of railway track going. So the second option is to move your train, and when you move your train, you start the game moving at a speed of 2, indicated by your little board here. And you're going to move up railway track from city to city, depending on that amount of movement. So I could go 1 and 2. And if you remember, my contract is to end in Cologne. And when I end in Cologne, I can actually choose to discard this contract and put it in my scoring pile at the end of the game. However, there are some twists on this game. So when you use your own railway line or public railway line, then it's not going to cost you anything. So you can do it for free. However, if I started to use other people's railway lines, so say I wanted to go from Cologne straight through to Berlin, then I could use this white player's track here. But if by doing so, I would remove this token to show that it's now public railway line, but I would have to pay the white player a coin in order to use their service. And the third action is simply to take 5 pieces of railway track from the common supply into your personal supply. So that's a bit of an inefficient move to make, but is of course a lot more cost efficient and effective than actually paying money to take that railway track. And that's going to be pretty much all the actual actions you can take in the game. There is a slight tweak when it comes to the end of the game, once all the 3 stacks of cards have been depleted, but again, I don't think it's going to add any value into explaining what that is. But I do want to explain the pacing of this game and what changes as these decks proceed and go on throughout the game. So the first thing to do is that once the first stack of tickets has been depleted, then you are actually going to add a second carriage to your train, meaning that of course you can hold 2 tickets at a time, and you add more depth and add more variety to the routes that you can take in order to plan those connected cities. And once the second stack of cities is depleted, then you are going to actually flip your train over to the opposite side, which means that you now can move with a speed of up to 3. So again, you can move from city to city up to 3 times rather than the usual 2. And that is essentially a game of Free Ride explained. So as you can tell there, the rules themselves of this game are very light, very digestible, and not much actually going on in terms of rules overhead. However, let's talk about the gameplay and how I feel about the actual game. So first off, I do like that rule simplicity. There's certainly no rules bloat here. Just boil down into 3 simple actions: either build new rail, move your train, or take more rail from supply. So I do like the way that this is very easy to explain and get straight into, and I like the slight twist on the ticket system here, where you have options and some flexibility, because a display of 6 tickets. I've actually only got 5 out here as a mistake, but you're supposed to have 6 columns here. And I like the fact that you can be a bit flexible with these. You can start in Sofia and deliver in Oslo, or you can start in Rostow and deliver in Sofia. So you can kind of work with what you've got here, and you're not so pigeonholed and so restricted on what you can do, and you generally got a good option available to you. And this ticket system really ties into the actual decision space of the game, because this is actually an efficiency puzzle. You want to be making these deliveries as efficiently as you can by wasting as little movement as possible. And of course, to do that, you're going to have to go from point A to point B, but making sure that the new point A is as close as possible to the old point B. So that, again, because you cannot actually start a new ticket until you are in that city in the first place. And of course, this is a dynamic state of play, because some people might be after the same tickets as you are. And although you might have spent a bit of effort to travel somewhere, then somebody else could have grabbed that bunch of tickets and therefore left you in the dark, and you're going to have to start a new plan and try a new most efficient route of what's available to you. I also love this idea of this public and private railway lines, because it adds a lot of depth here, and using other people's railway lines is not a light decision to make. And because of course it's going to cost you money in order to use somebody else's railway line, and money is an extremely valuable resource, not only for gameplay reasons, but because of points at the end of the game. 3 points each is nothing to be sniffed at. But also the fact that once you use somebody's line, that line is now going to become public for all the players. So sometimes you've got to consider, is it going to be worth for me to use or take the brunt of that decision and sacrifice my money so I can use that line for free? But is it going to help somebody else more than it's going to help me? And is it going to be worth it, because am I going to be using that railway line probably more than once and delivering to and fro? So that is a really cool decision space, and sometimes you just want to be grabbing up land, like for example this white player has here, knowing that the yellow player wants to travel to Cologne to make their contract fulfillment. Are they going to shut off all the routes around it, making sure that they're more likely going to use their own railway line? So it's a really cool kind of back and forth interaction between the players, which sometimes is just going to be unavoidable, and it's all about weighing up, is it going to be worth or cost effective for me to use this railway line to get this contract fulfilled, or is it worth me making my own railway line and sacrificing those turns? So it's balancing money and time and trying to get those tickets fulfilled. And I also like the fact that the actual ticket system works, where the first ticket you fulfill of a certain contract is going to be worth 5 points, and every other one is going to be worth 2 points. So my first Stockholm will be worth 5 points, but if I were to go to Stockholm again, it's going to be worth 2 points. But what that means is that it's kind of compensated for the fact that you're going to be easier for you to make those deliveries because you've already got that route established, and it's going to be free for you to do so. But is it going to be worth for you to go to new lands and venture into new parts of the map that haven't been explored yet in order to get those 5 points? Additionally, as you can see here on the extremities of the board here, so the least efficient routes to take and the kind of areas on the edge of the board which have less connective through paths are actually given a bunch of money or 2 money coins attached to those cities. So when you go there or when you pass through there, then you're going to take the additional 2 money, which is again a really strong incentive to get to those cities as quickly as you can, which again just gives you that extra nudge in order to explore new parts of the map. So despite the absolute elegant and streamlined rule system, the actual decisions are pretty plentiful, and it is a constant efficiency puzzle. When you're going to do your routes, which way you're going to go, whose track are you going to use. So the actual meaningful decision in relation to the rules is pretty strong. The time investment for Freeride is pretty much spot on. The box does say 55 minutes. I would say that's a little bit misleading. I think more often than not, this is going to take 60 to 75 minutes, maybe even at that 4 or 5 player count going to 90 minutes. But despite that, I don't think it's too long for the game. I think at times it can seem like we've got a lot of cards to get through here, but bearing in mind that once people take new contracts, they're actually going to be taking 3 cards at a time. So these decks do actually deplete quite quickly because again, you're putting 3 cards out every single time you refresh these 6 columns. And the uptime as well is really snappy. There isn't really that much scope for analysis paralysis, and there isn't much scope for long downtime when it's other people's turns. I think the replay value of Freeride is solid. There's pretty much going to get the same experience every time you play, but it is such a tactical, reactive game. You're always reacting to the current tickets available to you, you're reacting to the current board state and the routes available to you as well, and prioritising things at that moment. So it is a more tactical game, and the variable setup and things isn't going to really influence the enjoyment you get from the game and the longevity of it. I think a lot of the staying power from this game comes through its elegance and how simple it actually is. I think one of the strongest points of this game is the player interaction, because, like it or not, you are going to start treading on other players' toes and start venturing into their parts of the map. Not like they own those parts of the map, but you know what I mean. You are going to start encroaching on other people's lands and going to pretty much be forced to use other established railway lines that other people have used. And that kind of back and forth of the economy is absolutely fascinating to me. I like the way that the map does close down as the game goes on, and it all is about weighing up, can you afford to play this certain player a coin in order to use the railway track? Is it going to be beneficial? There's also some passive interaction in terms of the contracts available to you, whether they mean to or not. Are they going to hate draft, or are they just going to take cards and inadvertently ruin your plans? So there is that race element of getting these contracts done to make sure that you get to the next city before the other people do, so that you can establish your next route and your next, the best route available to you. I think from a production element, this is generally good. I like the way the game looks. It's not trying too hard to be something it's not. It has a classical throwback look to it. Simple wooden pieces. I always love bright Euro, painted wooden pieces on top of a relatively beige board. the map looks good, it's nice and crisp and clean, and you can clearly see where all the cities start and end and stuff. I also like the train tracks here, the fact that that you can hold your cards on here, they flip over and upgrade. And these fit really nicely, these wooden arches fit really nicely around the train track, just to show that it's yours and your established route. So I do like the way that everything fits together, and it certainly looks good on the table. The cards themselves, although I think the artwork looks good, again, it looks classic, it looks really quite sophisticated, there is some issues with the functionality and the actual practical use of the card. So, for example, if you're not the best at geography, which admittedly I'm not, sometimes you can spend a lot of time trying to kind of correlate the cards to their place on the map here. And it would have been really nice if there was some kind of mini map on the board or on the card to show, this is roughly where it is on the map, or maybe do some kind of color coded cards where, maybe these cards are yellow and it will show like the yellow section of the map, just so you can quickly look at a glance roughly where those cities are, rather than constantly cross-referencing the two. And that's kind of the main issue there. I do kind of see what they've done here, trying to maybe not patronise their players. But it was an issue that came up, everyone I played this with did mention that. And I can certainly agree to that. It could have been ironed out a bit better and just made that, or just kind of made those little standstills smooth out in terms of, again, cross-referencing the two. But other than that, I'm really happy with the production. The sense of progression of the game is fantastic because, of course, more railway lines are being established, but particularly because once those decks deplete, you're going to start adding a new carriage and then your new level 3 train. So it does have a forward momentum to it, and you're not doing the same thing in the first round as you are in the third round. So it does keep you moving along or chugging along as it should do. So it doesn't feel so static. I also think that the scalability of the game is generally decent, but you want to be playing with at least 3 players just to keep that tightness, because I think generally if you're playing this at 2 players, you're going to kind of have your own part of the map and not really be too worried about what the other players are doing, which is of course a major factor in this game. There is a solo mode as well, so if you do like solo modes, and this one does offer a variety of that, which does change the rules somewhat, where you're trying to beat your high score, but you're basically trying to fulfill as many contracts as you can in a certain amount of time. You're going to get given a bunch of coins, and it's going to kind of tick down, and round after round you're going to have to get giving up a coins in order to get those contracts done. So it does have this that element to it. It does change the rules slightly, but because the game is such a simple and elegant rule set, then it is so versatile, and you can be really kind of messed around and played with to try lots of different modes. So overall, I'm pretty damn happy with Freeride. I certainly think this one benefits from its simplicity, and I think Friedemann Friese generally does a good job of not making his games overwrought and knowing when to say, enough is enough, I'm happy with the design, and it's going to benefit, again, from its simplicity and elegance. So yeah, I love the way this game is just boiled down to 3 simple rules. You can get this explained in less than a minute and get going straight away. And it all goes back to this player interaction. That's what I really love about this game. That flow of money, that flow of resources. Are you going to use someone's railway line? Are you going to take the time to build an alternative route? And I just love efficiency puzzles. So I tend to like route building and pick up and delivery games when you can have to plan your routes most efficiently. And the added element of a public market here just kind of adds a bit more spice into the game and adds that extra layer of player interaction. I love, is this the most efficient route to take? How far have I got to go to get my next contract? And when you're juggling 2 at the same time, it's even more interesting. Am I going to divert here? And I'm going to come back, and then there's going to be some more public railway lines that I can use and not have to spend my own money for. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. There's for that simple rule set, there is a good decision space. So yeah, that's certainly a recommendation for me. I think this is a lot of fun and another strong design from Friedemann Friese. So this is actually going to get a shield of quality for me. A real welcome, pleasant game, and that's a lot of fun to play. So yeah, that concludes my thoughts on Freeride. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you found it useful or at least somewhat entertaining, then please hit like and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Additionally, if you wish to support the show, because I am a one-man operation and I don't get any support from publishers, then please consider backing on Patreon at patreon.com/chairman of the board, where you can back for as little as £2 per month. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.